All right. Okay, so it looks like it's working. I'm going to turn off my camera and mic here in Google Meet. All right, everybody. So we're going to be taking a look at this same foot setup and kind of create that. We do want to integrate it, of course, into our character's rig, so there will be some differences, but yeah, so let's do that. I'm going to open up my character. Don't tell me I don't have the rigged version. It appears that that might have been one of the casualties of my purge of my machine, is that I think I don't think I backed that part up. I don't think I had saved it here. I do have a version from previous year, so I'll just bring that one out. Okay, so this only has, I think, some of the armature. Let's see. So this one only has the legs, unfortunately, so we're gonna have to, I'll go with this. Yeah, sorry guys, it looks like I did not back up properly what we worked on last week, and so that's, we're gonna have to kind of do some of it from scratch. I'll do the waist down so that we can kind of reference that, so you can understand how this will work in conjunction with the hip bone and the spine and everything like that, so that you'll have an understanding of the context that this will live in within the rest of our rig. Okay, so I'm going to take all this, clear out the rotation, clear out any scaling, and clear out any movement. Okay, I have some keyframes here. I'm just going to select all these and delete those keyframes. Alright, so what we should have everything named properly. So we should have our L underscore leg, right? L underscore leg. Alright, so I have my leg chains here, right? So same as I talked about last week. I also have my It's gonna be a fun. I feel like the rest of the year is gonna be very fun, very interesting. Okay, so my Blender just crashed. Okay, so I'm back. What I'm going to do is, because this is probably from an older version of Blender and it's probably protesting to some degree because of that, I'm going to take the armature here. I'll just actually open another version of Blender here. I'll get the orc model. So with keyframes, go into object mode. So this is kind of a neat thing you can do in Blender. I can select just this, right? Control C, copy that, and then paste that into my other scene. Control V. Okay, I'll save this other scene. Save that. And I'll close this one. Alright, so I have this, and we'll just kind of work into this. Hopefully we don't crash. Okay, I'll go into X-ray mode and go into edit mode here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a hip bone or hip controller. So press Shift D on this bone. I'll just lift this up, make it a little shorter. Bring up my navigation panel. I can play with the length here. Right. I'll give this a name. Hip control. Make sure it's not set to deform. Right. This is also not set to deform. These are all set to deform, right? Each of these foot bones are set to deform. All right, I'm going to turn my camera off there. And yeah, so what we want to do is we'll set up our IKs, and we'll set everything up just like we looked at in that video. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to hide this bone, right? Just so it's not distracting us. In fact, what I'll do is, because everything's named properly, I'm going to delete all the bones on one side. And like I said last time, we're just going to build all the bones for one side of the rig first, and then symmetrize over after the fact. Okay, so you can delete one half of the bones on your rig, like just the legs, right? And then we can resymmetrize after all the complexity has been sorted out and everything like that. Okay. So let's go through and build this thing. So the first thing we need is we'll make this a child of this hip bone. So let's So I'll have a hip kind of swinging bone like this. I'll put my 3D cursor here. Oh, so a lot of other things I don't have set up, guys, is I don't have my screencast keys set up, as I'm realizing now. I don't have a lot of my plugins going. I should be able to. I'll have to download it because of my modem issue or my Wi-Fi issue. My Dropbox isn't able to sync currently to my computer, so I can go to my Dropbox and I can just download that plugin. Okay, I'm just downloading it now. Okay, let's quickly install that. File or edit, preferences, install. Enable it, and I think this should be the right one. Turn it on. Let's get a nice color. Alright, let's change the size there. Okay. Alright, so we should be good. Let's get this. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so I'm gonna snap this. So put my cursor here, take this bone, Shift S, selection to cursor, right? So this is kind of in the same spot. And typically what we'd also have here is our spine, right? So E, Z. Okay, these should all be deformation bones. This should not. This should be, yes, okay. This will be the hip control. This will be the hip. This will be spine. All right. Okay, this and this, sorry, this and this should be children of this. Control P, keep offset, and then this upper leg should be a child of our hip. Control P, keep offset. All right, so that is our basic setup for that. I'm going to save this. Okay, so now let's get into the foot stuff. For this, I don't really need to see, I guess I can have my character here visible. So the first thing we want to do, again, we want to make a IK target, right? So last week what we did, we selected this joint and we extruded out, right? We got an IK target that way. We're not going to do that this time, so I'm going to delete that bone. What I'll do is I'll simply, again, like they said in the video, I'll duplicate this bone, Shift D to duplicate that. We'll change the length here. Whoops, don't go too small. Hold down the Shift key. I'm just holding the Shift key while I scrub this so that it doesn't kind of move too quickly. Anytime you're making a rotation or a movement or a scale operation, or if you're sliding a parameter in a field like this, if you hold down the Shift key, you'll get finer control. All right, so we'll give this a name. We'll call this R, again, maintaining our name and convention. So that was one thing that he didn't really kind of discuss in the video. But since we're not making this in isolation, we do want to make sure that we have the correct left-right name and convention. So we're calling this R underscore foot. Oops. Or we'll call it leg. IK. Call it leg underscore IK. We don't need a .00 or anything like that. I'll just put enter there for that. We will also need a IK pull target. So we'll start from the knee here. I'll just extrude forwards on Y. Right? And then we'll select that. Unparent it, Alt P. Clear parent. Move it forward. Okay, give it a name, R underscore pull, or we'll call it leg underscore pull target. I forgot to unparent this one, so this IK target, it can't be a child of this previous bone. By virtue of me making a duplicate of this bone to start, it's automatically going to inherit the parent-child relationship. So it'll be basically a sibling of the bone I duplicated it from. That, and I also have to uncheck deformation. So I don't want this to be a deformation bone. So I have to make sure I check that off. I think that might have been something that wasn't covered in that video, but we will want to make sure we check it off because this is purely a control bone. So this is a leg underscore RK, IK, Alt P, clear the parent. This will not be a child of that bone. We'll select this again. We'll duplicate it. Okay, one more time. Right click to slap it back into its initial spot. Right click again, and then we'll hit switch directions, or you can press Alt F. Okay. Okay. Again, we don't have to, but we can change the roll or the length on this as well. I kind of like it being bigger like this. You know, I think changing the length on this is cosmetic, but yeah, so for my purposes I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to leave it as is, but I will make this bone a child of this bone. Control P, keep offset. Okay, this one I need to uncheck deformation. It's not a deformation bone, and we need to give it a name. So this will be R underscore ball pivot. Okay, and we'll do something similar here. We'll shift a D to duplicate this, right? Alt F to flip it. Uncheck deformation. Okay. And then technically I can clear the parent, right? But if I'm parenting it to someone, if I know I'm going to parent it to something else after, I don't really have to clear the parent. Because once I parent it to something else, it's just going to kind of alter that hierarchy. Okay, so it's basically taking it out from a child of the thing you want it to not be a child of, and then making it a child of something else that you do want it to be a child of. So I do not want this to be a child of anything, but technically I'm going to make it a child of something else later, so don't really have to worry. So here I'm going to rename this. We'll call this R underscore toe pivot. Okay, I'm going to select all of this here. I'm just going to move all of this down a little bit, so that the toe pivot is right at the bottom, right? And then the ball pivot is right at the bottom as well, okay? I do want this one, by virtue of that change I made, see how this bone is not perfectly aligned with the a bone above it anymore? So I'm actually I'll just start again. So I'll delete this bone, select this one again, Shift D. Okay, select this one, or let's make it a little shorter so we can see it properly. So this one we do want to make it smaller because it's completely overlapping another bone, so it's really hard to discern what's what. This one I didn't make it smaller because it's flipped and it's very clear which bone is which, right? So I didn't have to kind of make it shorter. So this bone will be our IK, so R underscore leg underscore IK. Okay, make sure it's not a deformation bone, right? And make sure that it's a child of this bone here. Control P, keep offset. All right, so why do we do this? Why do we have this like reverse hierarchy of pivots, right? So remember, the head of a bone is where it rotates from, right? So if we have the head of this bone here, that means we can basically rotate from the toe, which will in turn move this bone, because this bone will be a child of this bone, which will in turn move our IK target bone, okay, because the IK target bone is a child of this ball pivot bone. And then the IK target will in turn move the shin's target location, right? So the shin will solve to the location of the IK target. So we can kind of, you know, indirectly move our ankle here by rotating the toe, right? Or by rotating the ball, right? Because as you know, we can rotate the ball independently, the ball pivot independently of the toe, because this is a child of this. All right, so we get a pretty kind of useful setup, right? Where we can get this reverse kind of chain going to kind of get the pivot happening from the toe, from the ball, and then we'll also have one happening here from the heel, okay? So just making sure that my relations are correct. So the parent of, I can go into my bone tab, right? And I can just check my parent-child relationships. The parent here is the ball pivot, which is correct. The parent of this hasn't been set. Okay, so I have to select this, shift select this, press Control P. This can be connected. And so if I select this, yeah, so the parent of this is the toe pivot. And the parent of this has not been made yet, but we'll make it shortly. So we're going to go a little bit out of order from what was done in the video. We're going to make the inner roll and the outer rolls first, and then we'll make the heel afterwards. So first I'll go to the top view here. Actually, let's go for a little bit of angle here. I'm going to duplicate this bone here, Shift D, move it on X here, and get the inner roll. Shift D again, move it on X to get the outer roll. Let's make sure that these are not deformation bones. Just double check this one, make sure this is not deformation anymore. Yeah. So we'll call this R. Foot underscore inner roll. We'll call this R underscore foot underscore outer roll. Okay, and we want to do the parenting. So what we're going to do is we want the heel, right? Because imagine if we rotate from the heel, we want the toe and the rest of the foot to move up with it, right? We also want these guys to move with the heel. So if I kind of swing the heel left, right, this way, we want these to rotate with it. So I need these to be children of the heel. And then I need this to be a child of one of these, okay? And then one of these will be a child of the other one. Okay, so let's make this a child of this. Control P, keep offset. I'll make this a child of this. Control P, keep offset. And then this will be a child of this new heel bone that we're going to create. Once again, I'll duplicate this one. Just go into our side view. Shift D. And move back on Y here. We'll call this R underscore heel pivot. Yeah, so Colin, sorry, just seeing your comment now. You want to make sure that in your when you're in solid shading mode, want to go into your drop-down viewport shading options and then make sure X-ray is turned on. Or you can also do it from here. This button basically looks like it does the same thing. Shortcut, if you hover over it, Alt Z is the shortcut, Alt Z. Alright, so The other option, you could hide things. You could select the bone you don't want to see and you could hide it, right? And then kind of work from there. Okay, so we have this. Let's make sure this is not a deformation bone, the heel pivot. And let's make this the parent of this bone here, our foot interroll. Okay, so this is so far the highest in our hierarchy of the foot. So let's kind of select that. Control P, keep offset. Okay, so now if I go into pose mode, we can just test some of this out. So I can select this. If I rotate that, you see that a lot of the foot is going with that. Okay, so that's perfect. That's what I want. And now we'll have to set up some things like the IK target and other things. Okay. All right. So let's do that. So we have to do our constraints in pose mode. So I'm in pose mode now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this big bone a child, or copy the rotation of this bone. So select the bone I want to copy from, and then shift select the bone I want to copy to. And I'll press Control Shift C, and I want a copy rotation constraint. Okay, I'll know the bone has a constraint on it because it will change color. In this case, it's changed green. Okay, so now if I rotate this bone, that will move with it. Oops, if I move this bone, that will move with it. Okay, and it looks like I have some kind of weird issue going on. So what's going on here? The parent of this is the ball pivot. That's right. Okay. I think this bone, I think my mistake was this should not be connected. So I need to disconnect this. So I'm going to take this, press Alt P, and disconnect this bone. Let's see if that doesn't fix the problem. So if I move this, nope, still an issue. What is going on here? Okay. Let's set up a couple of our other constraints first, and then see if that doesn't fix things. I'm going to select this here. This is going to be the IK target. All right. So this toe pivot is going to also be the IK target of this bone. Okay. So select this. Shift select this. And can control or so Shift I. Okay. Add IK. We have to make sure we change the chain length here to 1. Okay. This bone, because it's just a chain length of 1, we don't need a pull target or anything like that for this. We should be good. Let's rotate this. Something weird is happening. I'll have to kind of see what that is. I may have to kind of recap some of the video just to see if I didn't make a mistake in there somewhere. But oh, what is it? Yeah, I think I put the copy rotation on the wrong bone. That's what I did. Alt R. Yeah. Let's delete the copy rotation here. Okay, so this is the parent of this if I rotate that, okay, let me kind of keep going here, and then we'll kind of sort this out after. Let's put our IK on this first. So select this IK target, shift select this bone here. Okay, our shin bone. Press Shift I to add an IK. We'll set the chain length here to 2. Okay, we'll want to make sure we set our pull target as well. So add pull target, it'll be in our armature, and the bone will be our pull target. We'll need to change the rotation here. So about negative 90 degrees in this case. Okay. All right, and so now, if I were to move this, okay, so let me just track down what I'm doing wrong here. So this, I'm going to kind of trace back the lineage here. So this is a child of our ball pivot. This is our ball pivot. This is a child of our toe pivot. This is a child of the outer roll. This is a child of the inner roll. And this is a child of the heel. And I think this is where I've gone wrong here. So this heel is a child of the leg bone. That's my problem. So I need to clear out that parent, okay? Ultimately, what I want to do actually is I want to make this a child of my root bone, okay? So let's go into edit mode. For now, actually just select this for now and press Alt P. Just clear out that parent, and that should fix the issues we're having with our this guy. Yeah, so we're all good now. So now I can make this, and I believe it was this one, I can make this one copy the rotation of this IK target. So I'll select this, or select this, shift select this, Shift I, whoops, not Shift I, my apologies, sorry, Control Shift C, copy rotation. Alright, so now I should be able to rotate, yeah, so I'll be able to rotate from the heel there, like so. Okay, and I can also rotate from the toe, can rotate from here, right? I don't care that it's not moving this guy. I just care that it's moving the whole foot structure, and I can rotate from here as well. So I could leave these controls visible and kind of just manipulate them directly, or we could do kind of something like what we saw in the video where he had another bone here, which we used as a controller for the banking, right? Either side, and the tilt from the heel and the roll from and the roll from the ball. So let's do that. We'll jump into edit mode. Okay, I'll duplicate this, Shift D. Can make it bigger, change the length here. Okay, and we'll give this a name. Make sure it's not a deformation bone, which is good. The name will be R underscore foot underscore CTRL. Okay. And let me just, adjust the length just a tiny bit more. Okay, so now what we can do is add some more constraints. So go into pose mode, and we will add a copy rotation constraint. From this to this. So select this, shift select the inner bone, Control Shift C, copy rotation. Okay. Go to our bone constraints. We only want to copy the rotation on the X and Z. We don't want Y, because if we have rotation on the Y, right, you'll see how it pivots from the middle of the foot. We want the middle of the foot pivot to happen from this bone and this bone. So we will want to omit any contribution from the copy rotation there. We'll want to put on a limit rotation as well. And you know what, we'll kind of just do it now as well. We'll select this, shift select this, Control Shift C. We'll do a copy location as well. Put that up top. So now this will act almost like a parent. So if I move this bone, it will this little bone here, my foot and my heel roll, will copy its location. So if I move my foot controller there, it'll copy that, and if I rotate it here on X, it'll copy that, and if I rotate it on Z, it'll copy that. Okay. I can see a situation where we might want to have this rotate on a Y as well, but especially if the foot's off the ground, you want to rotate it more naturally. But yeah, we'll just handle the rotation from these guys. So what I'll do now is copy the rotation of this to this, right? Or first we'll put a limit rotation, so we also need a limit rotation. And actually I can see why they added the copy location last, because he was going to copy these constraints over to these other bones. So if I add the copy location already and then I copy the constraints to the other bones, then I'll have to delete the copy rotate location constraint from some of these other bones, and then just tweak the copy rotation and limit rotations. That's okay. What I'll do is I'll just add my limit rotation. Or sorry, let's do the quicker way. Select this bone, shift select this bone, Control Shift C, and we'll go for limit rotation. Okay, and we'll just again think about how we want this to work. When I rotate this way on X, so if I press RX here, so if I rotate in negative X here, based on how I have this set up, I want it to control this bone. But if it's positive, I don't want it to. So I'll go to the limit rotation. So I want my limits to be on X. I want it to go to a minimum of 45 degrees or 50 degrees. It'll be up to you. But no positives. So if I rotate on X, oh, I wasn't getting the local axis, so I was doing global X rotation, so it was throwing me. I need this to be 0 and this to be 45 or 50. Okay, so now if I rotate this, and what was throwing me is because I'm in global transformation space. If I was in local transformation space and I rotate this on X, you can see the positive value up top left here, right? Okay, so we can see that limit in effect, like so. All right, so now we're gonna take this bone, and we're gonna shift, select this bone, and shift select this bone. And I've never really used this, but I guess there's an F3 menu. Okay, cool, that's nice to know. Let's do copy constraints to selected bones. Select this, shift select this, F3. No active bone with constraints for copying. Okay, so the way copying constraints works is you have to select the bone you want to copy from last. Okay, so select this first, shift select. Let's hide this. Select this bone, shift select this bone, F3. Okay, cool. And so the copy location is the one I need to get rid of here. Oops. Make sure I get the right bone. This bone, need to get rid of the copy location. There we go. And then the copy rotation, we need to set this to local space. Local space. And the mix mode, we set this to after original. Okay, and I'll do the same over here. We'll set this to local space. Actually, sorry, I'm on the wrong constraint. So make sure we're on the right constraint. Copy rotation here. We'll do local space. So it looks like my stream dropped out, but it looks like it's back in. Can you guys just confirm that you can still hear? All right, so yeah, OBS is now dropped in and out a little bit. Oh boy. Let me know, guys, if it's kind of making sense now. Hopefully we didn't miss too much. Man. Okay. All right. So what I was doing here just now is I'm making sure that I just have everything set up properly. So some of the constraints, the copy rotation in particular, I need to set it to local space, and set the mix mode to after original. So that way I can do further rotations if I wanted to, right? Generally speaking, if you set this to the mix mode to replace, on a copy rotation, you will not be able to really even rotate it at all, right? Especially if all of these are locked off, you won't be able to touch it. But if you set this to after original, the mix mode to after original, then you can still further apply some rotation to it. Okay, and that'll be useful for what we want to do for later on. Okay, so we have that, and just trying to think what else. So this is right. Let's just make sure this one's right. We want to make sure we turn off copy rotation on the Z for this one. Okay, we just want the rotation on the X. And then we need to invert this. So if I unhide my controller shape, all right, so when I rotate this up, and if I rotate it down, I want this to bend in the opposite way. So let's set this to minus 45 and max 0. Again, I have to set this to local space. Local space. So make sure that your constraints are in the correct space mode. So we have that, and now we have, what's going on? I might have to change the bone roll on this one for this to work properly. So the limit rotation here is minus. So let's change the bone roll because this is not working properly. So if you run into this problem where it's actually not bending the right way, that's not good. You might say, oh, we could just fix this by setting this to 0 and this to 45. But then what will happen is this will rotate both simultaneously. They'll both be kind of influenced at the same time. So what we'll need to do is set this back to minus 45. This to 0, and if it's not working properly, go into your edit mode, and we can change the roll here to 180. Pose mode. Now if I rotate this, I get the correct kind of functionality there, right? I can rotate here from the toe. Whoops. So anytime something like that happens, it tells me that if my rotation goes flying, it's looking okay now. Oh, it's okay. I might want to put a limit rotation on this as well. Right, so it doesn't go beyond 0. For when I'm rotating down like that. So on this one, I'll just add a, let's see, Rx. So that is in, I don't want this to rotate in the negative direction. So I'm going to add a bone constraint to this, just a limit rotation. We'll limit on the x-axis. Put a max here of, say, 90. So now I can rotate up. Right, up to 90 degrees, but then I can't rotate down on below X. And I can rotate on Z, right? Put out a cigarette kind of thing. Let's see if we're going to do the same thing here for the ball. You don't quite get the same functionality there. Let's set this to local space as well. All right. So like I said, there are a few limitations to this setup. Can't easily move the toe independently. If I just want to lift the toe up, it would be hard for me to do that. But this is the IK target. Yeah, so it's hard for me to kind of just lift up that toe. So I'm kind of locked into it, a bit of a certain setup, but more times than not, I don't really need to move the toe, flex the toe independently. And there's probably ways we could figure out how to get that working if we needed to. Okay. And by the way, not sure if this is a carryover from an old version of Blender, if I had just set this on my own. But here where it says position, the axis position, we can actually set this to 0. This is probably what we want in our armature controls. So that the axis is at the point of the rotation. So this is something that we should probably set and then bake into our default Blender file. Again, you can set your defaults for your Blender file by going to File, Defaults, Save Startup File. Whatever you have in your scene though will be baked into that startup file. So in this case I don't want that because I have this half-built character in here. Alright, so let's do our last kind of rotation here. Copy and limit rotations on these guys. So I'm going to select this, or select each of these, shift select this one, and just press F3, and I'll just do again copy constraints to selected bones. Alright, we just need to adjust the constraints here. So this rotation I only want it to happen on the Y-axis, right? And it'll have some limits on the Y-axis. So this, when I rotate this on Y, on the positive Y, it'll affect this guy. So we'll go max, say, I don't know, 60. Here, min of this. Okay, and let's do the same over here. And because this is all local rotation, I've set to local space. If these bones had a different orientation from this bone, it would cause problems. Or if they had different rolls from this bone, it would cause some issues. But because it doesn't, it should work properly. Alright, so this one here, again, we'll set that to copy with the Y rotation, and we'll set the limit here to the opposite, it'll be minus 60. Alright, so now if I rotate this bone on X, I get that. If I rotate on Y, I get the banking on this side, and if I rotate on, rotate on Y the other way, I get the banking on the other side. Okay, I can stack this, rotate this here, our Y, right, and bank. Yeah, okay, so it all looks good. So select everything here, Alt R, Alt G, Control S to save, and that should be my foot. Let's just hide the things that we don't need to see. So each of these guys, don't need to see these. This one I want to see, this one I don't. These ones I don't need to see. This one I don't need to see. This heel, don't need to see. This and this I don't need to see. Yeah, and that should be pretty much it. So I'll press M with all these selected, and I'll just move these to a different layer. So now I can basically just affect my mesh, my thing here. Okay, so these are the controls I need, and then of course my God node here. Let's make it so that it actually works. Alt H to unhide this and this should each be a child of this. Control P, keep offset. So now if I'm in pose mode and I move this, my whole rig should kind of go with it. I should be able to move my upper body independently from the lower body. Yeah. Okay. And I can just reveal everything, so we can just make sure, confirm that it's all working. So again, if I select my God node here, or my root node, we can kind of make sure everything is moving, like so. Alright. And so now what we can do is just again file save. We can symmetrize the leg bones here, and they'll kind of duplicate to the other side. All the kind of layer groups will also be kind of preset. Ideally, what I do is kind of create some custom controller shapes. Let's quickly do that. I'm just going to make a new collection here. So just hit go to scene collection, press new, call this controller shapes. Okay. Hopefully that like that new Ethernet or Wi-Fi chip is supposed to come today, and hopefully by this evening it'll be all sorted. All right, so so what do we have? We have this all set. And yes, we're going to make some controller shapes. So let's hide this previous other collection. Just go here, Shift C to put our 3D cursor in the center. Shift A. We'll just make a few different shapes. We'll make a circle. Okay, we'll set the vertices count to say 8. Tab into edit mode. We'll dissolve these vertices. We'll just scale this down a little bit. Press Control B to bevel. There's at the bottom, there's going to be an option, I think, to yeah, we can tap V to say whether or not we're able to affect vertices. So I'm just going to round out this form. I'll just press M a few times also to change my bevel mode to get percentage. We'll just kind of get something kind of roundish like that. Okay, and this will be, call this control foot, or let's call it control shape underscore foot. I'm only naming this kind of for my own sanity for later. Let's make another simpler one. Shift A to add, we'll just add another circle. This time we'll go for say 16. We can go 32 actually. I'll just make it a little smoother. We'll call this CTL underscore FK underscore circle. Sure, and then we need a type roll controller. So let's press Shift A one more time, and we'll create start with a plane here. Tab into edit mode, SX. Here, Control R, put one bend in the middle. Just lift this up. GZ, whoops, GZ. GY, Control B. Let's go for something 90 degrees. Let's actually delete these X, delete those vertices, select these, and just extrude upwards, like so. Select these two and just kind of bevel. And let's cut one edge loop in the middle, here like so. And merge at center here. Merge at center. Select this, and just press S, X here. So just bevel these, just tiny bevel. Very, very slight. Just select this and this, this, and this. Press S, X, just kind of get these going out like that. Okay. Now I'm going to select each of these interior verts and just press X, and so I delete those vertices. Okay. I'll call this shape the CTL underscore roll. Yeah, CTL roll. That's fine. Cool. We might have to change the orientation of some of these things later on. I'll just move these over here to the side, and I'll bring back my visibility of my kind of collection here. Move these so. Alright, so now I'm going to go here to impose mode. I'm just going to change some of these custom shapes. So in my bone properties, in my impose mode, I'm going to go to viewport display. Just open that tab up. Custom shape, custom object. I'll go for the God node here. I'll just go for the CTL FK circle. I can change the scale. I can make that a little bit bigger if I want. Do something similar for this guy. Okay, circle again. Make it just a little bit bigger. All right. So this again makes it easy to select things. The IK target can kind of just leave that as a bone. The foot here, we want to use our roll, CTL roll. This here, I'm going to go in here to object mode, select everything in edit mode, rotate it on Z by 180 degrees. Okay, so now I have something like that. And I can rotate this on X as well, just to kind of get this kind of looking the way I want it to. Okay, and we'll do something similar here for the front foot. We'll go into pose mode and custom object, control roll. Okay, so now we have these guys. Okay, we can't fully see what's happening, but let's bind this to our rig, or sorry, bind the rig to our mesh, and then we'll kind of start to see some of what's happening. For some of these guys, we might want to do something different. So usually for this, we'll want to have some kind of, and I probably need another controller shape. So I'm going to go here, object mode, just like that. Oops, Shift D, duplicate it, edit mode, scale it out on X, like so. Let's move that forward. That back. So delete these, X, dissolve vertices. Okay, so let's give this a name. Let's call it control underscore FK trunk. Okay, then we can go here, go into pose mode, and we can just make sure that we use the trunk control for these. Let's go in here and just kind of, we'll have to edit this. Select this, rotate it on Z 90 degrees, and then rotate it on X. Oops. right? So it is a bit of a clunky way to do it, but generally speaking, it gets us those custom control shapes that we need. Let's do another one here. Can eyedrop the thing we want. We can override its position as well. This I would like if we kind of like adjust it a little bit more easily, like slide it not all the way to the end, but up the end a little bit. But we can basically set this to go to, say, spine 02 instead. All right, and then basically continue on and set this to, say, spine 03. And on and on. Okay. So yeah, that's basically this, and now we have the ability to kind of go in and rotate things a bit more. Makes things a little easier to select. I'll hide my control shapes. I can actually, once I've used them like this, I can actually delete those control shapes. I'll make one last control shape here, actually. Go in here, object mode, Shift A, let's make a mesh cube, just move it. And I'll just use that cube. I'll just call this CTL underscore cube. Okay, hide my controller shapes. For this guy, I will use that cube. And right here where it says wireframe, I'll check that on so it doesn't render the faces, it just gives us that. I'll just make this a little bit smaller. Okay, and let's bind this now to our mesh. First, before we do that, we'll go into edit mode. When doing this, make sure that you reveal everything so that we're not going to accidentally, symmetrize only some bones. We make sure we get everything. So we get all the stuff on the right side here, and we will press right click and symmetrize. Okay, so now if we go into pose mode, we'll see that everything we've done is kind of already applied to the other side. I'm going to hide the stuff, hide the stuff I don't want to see, so we just have the kind of control stuff that we want to have access to. I don't have to show my axes anymore, so I'll turn that off. And yeah, I think we're pretty good. So the last thing I'll do is take my object here. I'm gonna just basically slice them up a little bit so that we don't have to worry about what's going on up top. So I'll just separate this by the selection. I'm gonna hide all of this. Hide all that. Okay, and then I just want to kind of rig the legs. Incidentally, you can have multiple armatures, right? Each different armature, and then rig things separately. It kind of helps with weight painting. So I could basically just do the legs like this, cut the legs off from the rest of the body, and then kind of select my mesh here, shift select my armature, press Control P, set parents to select this, shift select this, control P. Interesting. Huh. I'm not getting the option to add a armature. That is weird. Let me save this. I'm gonna reopen this file, open. Select this, shift select this, control P. There we go. So what happened there, I don't know exactly what happened, but I think what I suspect happened is that because the armature that I copied and pasted it in to the scene was from an old version of Blender, and even though I saved it, I feel like it didn't recognize it properly. So it wasn't until I saved and then reopened the scene that it converted the old rig information to the new version of Blender. So because I moved versions of Blender, that's what happened. Truthfully, what could also happen here is that some of the bone stuff might not work, like because there are sometimes version to version issues, like with rigging. I've experienced it in the past. It was a very, very long time ago, but yeah, that could be an issue. So it should be good now. So first select our mesh, shift select our armature, and press Control P. We're going to do armature with automatic weights. All right, and now we'll just kind of just check it to see what this is going to look like. So we should be able to move with these guys, right? Rotate. It's pretty good, right? Should be able to rotate here from the toes. Yep, it's all looking good. I should be able to, oops, do this. And I'll just kind of like, again, just show this so we can see what's happening. Right? So the whole joint chain is going, and I should be able to kind of select this guy in the back, rotate on Y, right? And kind of go from the inner rotation, outer rotation, back and forth. Okay, so this is the part that's kind of a little bit unnatural, right? Like kind of having this roll like that from the top view, but or while lifted. But yeah, generally speaking, this is a pretty solid setup. We have a lot of really good control here of the feet. So yeah, this is what I'd like to see from you guys. Unfortunately, I don't have the rest of the armature just because you know, I ran into again some computer issues, and I don't believe I backed that up. But I think that was in my downloads folder, and I don't think I copied that over. So yeah, but it wouldn't take that long to rebuild. And here we have a properly integrated foot setup. And we have our hip swing. Right? So that's what I'd like to see from you guys. And the one thing, like I said, we can't do as easily is like kind of basic regular forward kinematics type foot stuff. So just having the select a bone here, for example, and just rotate the foot like that, you know, that stuff is kind of a little bit more difficult to do. But beyond that, I think this is a good kind of powerful setup. Not too complex, but it gives us a lot of good functionality for like walking and things like that. All right, so I will save this, and then we'll talk a little bit about weight painting and vertex groups. Okay, cool. Any questions about this? No? Okay. So again, the main things that we're looking for is, you know, kind of naming your your bones properly. Making sure that you have all your constraints set up properly. Some things to be mindful of: if you don't put a slight bend here in your knees for the IK solver, sometimes it won't work, and you will wonder like, what, I did everything right. Set the chain length to 2. I have a pull target. I have my IK. Everything should work, and usually that's why. If there's no kind of slight bend in the relationship from the thigh to the foreleg, sometimes the solver won't know what to do. I've had some custom control shapes here, just to kind of make life easier. Oops, it's from the wrong side. All right, we can kind of rotate from the inner foot or outer foot. And yeah, and so some of the tests I'll do is I'll select, so for example, the hip control, or the hip control, right, and just kind of move that around and see if this works, right. I'll check to see if things like hip swing is set up and if that works properly. Right. I'll check to see that the feet don't automatically rotate. So when you move the body, I want to make sure that those feet stay nice and kind of glued to the ground. Okay. I'll check for weight painting issues. So, for example, I just noticed one there. When I do this, see how the heels go up and down? I probably don't want them to do that. So I'd have to go in and adjust the weight painting to make sure that these verts here, down here, are fully weighted to the foot bone. Okay. And so I just have like good fall off, good deformations there. The deformations here through the knees are solid. Where we'll run into more problems is up top with the chest, rib cage, things like that, shoulders in general. But if we set it up the way we did last week with the muscles and the placeholder bones, like the rib cage bones, we should be in pretty good shape that way. I'm going to look for a correct head functionality, so that if the head is moving, the jaw moves with the head, and then you can move the jaw separately, independently after the fact. Yeah, those are some of the main things I'll be looking for generally. Another thing I'm going to test is I'm going to check here, for example, if I move this foot. What happened there? Oh, the IK. Oh, that is a bit of an issue. So what's going on here? The IK is moving, and so that foot, the toe, is going too far. I have to think how I would fix that. That's an issue. Something that I'd have to kind of think about it and try to fix, but those are the kinds of issues that can pop up with rigging. So you'll want to find as elegant of a solution as you can, while kind of being mindful of limitations, and things that you might need to fix. I could put a limit rotation on that, so it only goes so far. That's kind of what I'm thinking I would probably do. Put a limit rotation on this. Limit rotation on X. So I'll do the opposite. Still going. Why is that? Limit rotation. Oh, set this to local space. So I'd have to sit down with this and kind of work out what's going on and why and all that. Let's kind of reveal our axes so that hide everything else. So it looks like the IK solver is overpowering everything else. Oh, what I set that to more minus. So would it not be the z-axis? The axis here that's perpendicular is the issue, is the one that's kind of causing me issues. This here, the one going out to the side. But I can try the z-axis. Doesn't hurt. Let's see. Nah. Let's put them all on. Put this after. And I could turn off stretch. Yeah, I would have to kind of sit down with it. I'm not going to kind of bother doing it with you guys right now. That being said, if you guys can figure out a solution for that, more power to you. I think that's the kind of thing that you want to be. It's the way you want to be thinking when rigging. It's problem solving. That's it. Understanding what the constraints do, understanding how parenting works, and how much you can get from just parenting alone. Strategically placing your pivot points, so if we want to roll from the heel, make sure that the head of a bone is there that we can roll from. If we want things to go along for the ride, make them children of that bone. If we want something to pivot from the toe, strategically place a bone there, right? So that the head of that bone will allow for the pivoting. And again, anything that needs to go along for that ride, make it a child of that hierarchy, or make it within the descendant, I guess, of that bone. And then kind of work that way. And then think about what bone do you want to rotate with another bone, what bone do you want to not rotate with another bone. Set up your limits, constraint limits, and things like that as well. Okay. That is our basic setup. I may have missed something from what he did in the video, but I think from my recollection in the video, he did not speak to the deformation bones whatsoever. So turning on and off deformations, and that is something we absolutely want to make sure we're doing, so that when we rig or when we bind, we don't get a whole big mess. All right, so let's quickly look at some of our weight painting tools and how we can work with them. So one of the things I like to do is I'll select my armature first. We can go here to edit and uncheck lock object modes. And that way, it's frustrating sometimes if you're in pose mode and you want to select your mesh and you can't, and you got to go out of pose mode and into object mode, and all that. It gets pretty tedious, right? So if you uncheck lock object modes, then we can kind of select our pose mode mesh, and then immediately go into object mode and select this guy, and then go back into some pose mode, and it just makes our lives in some ways a lot simpler. So that's something that we can absolutely do. And when we do that, we can select this. We can shift select our mesh after, and then we can go to weight paint mode. Okay, and now we can do some cool things where we can actually rotate or manipulate our mesh. I have to hold down Control and click, by the way. Control click. Oops. Or sorry, Shift click, Shift left click to select something. And then basically in weight paint mode, what we want to do to test for deformations is we want to or control click, sorry, control click. Shift click if we want to add to our selection. But basically I can move things around like this, and then we can kind of just select a bone, right? And we can see the weight painting of that particular bone, and we can preview if there's any deformation issues, right? Because we're choosing a pose that has some deformation on it to begin with. Okay, and so we can, from here, we can kind of go in and tweak things as we need to. And if we can't get into the back of the knee here, then we can control click a control, right? Kind of move forwards, reveal the thing that we need to reveal. Okay, and then we can kind of go in here and then paint in to the leg. Let's talk a little bit about our weight painting tools. So we briefly looked at this before, but we have a few different options here. We have a weight first and foremost. So this is how much influence do you want to paint onto these vertices. So basically, and I can turn on wireframe here too as well. It's probably not a bad idea. In my viewport overlays, if I turn on wireframe, I'll get to see where each of those vertices are, and it's on the vertex itself that I'm actually painting weight influence. So with this bone selected, okay, L underscore leg dot 002, any painting I do will kind of be adding or subtracting weights from this bone. So if I set the weight here to say 0, now I'm going to try to paint with a weighting of 0. Okay, the radius of my brush is 50 pixels. The strength of my brush is 100%. I can choose here whether I want to have pressure dynamics. If I'm using a stylus. So this little section here, this little icon, I can turn that on or off. And then I can basically paint on my mesh. So you'll see I'm painting now with a weighting of 0. So anything I touch is losing any influence from this bone. Okay, it's actually erasing any influence from that bone by painting a weighting of 0. I could change this to a weight of say 50.5. Right, and I could go in here and you'll see immediately when I touch, it's gonna kind of paint that 50% weighting on anything here. Okay, and again I can control click here and kind of just do the same. Alright, so legs are truthfully fairly straightforward. It's where we're going to run into issues is like in the chest area, and primarily in the face and the mouth and everything like that. We'll really want to get in there and be as careful as we can. So we have different draw modes as well. So we have draw, we have add, and what this is going to do is add a certain amount of weight. So if I have this set to 0.1, for example, and I paint here, it's going to add 0.1 to the influence of this bone. It's going to add 0.1 again, and it's going to kind of continue to add until it gets all the way to 1. Right? I don't think I can put in a negative value here. No. but I can subtract. So I could change this from add to subtract, right? And I could basically do the same thing. Just reduce the amount of kind of influence on that particular vert. Okay, and add some back. We can mix. I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how mix works. Let's look if there's a tooltip. Yeah, mix is, I don't know exactly what mix does. Lighten. Also, don't really know, to be honest with you. Draw, fairly straightforward. Add, multiply. Generally speaking, I'm working with subtract, add, and draw. I believe mix is. Let's quickly look it up. And anytime you're unsure, guys, just Google's right there. You can solve your questions really quickly. There we go. Let's get the actual documentation. So mix. In this blending mode, the weight value defines the target weight that will eventually be reached when you paint long enough on the same location of the mesh. And the strength determines how many strokes you need to place at the target weight. Okay, note that for strength 1, the target weight is painted immediately. Okay, and for weight 0, the brush just does nothing. Okay, so mix is basically like kind of the airbrush in Photoshop kind of thing. So this is where it'll eventually get to, and the strength basically allows me to kind of more gradually get there, and I could kind of turn on the pressure sensitivity so it's like that. And I imagine is that the limit? Does that place a limit on how far it can go? Let's see. So this should get maximum green. It should never turn orange or red if this works the way I'm thinking it could work. Yeah. So that's actually pretty useful. Mix is useful because it sets a constraint on how much you can. Oh, I have this set to draw. Let's set this to mix. Let's set this to 0.1. No. Yeah. So mix basically it gives you the how far you can get to, and then the strength, you can kind of get there more gradually, so you have a little bit more control over things. You can turn on your pressure sensitivity too to get even further control over all this. And if we run into situations like this where a vert is kind of like tucked away and hidden and we can't access it, sometimes you do have to dive into your mesh like this and kind of try to nail that or get to that offending vertice that way. Okay, so it's kind of like modeling the mouth. It's a little bit like you kind of have to be patient and kind of be willing to go in there and see what's what. There's also a really great linkage here between edit mode and weight paint mode, whereby we can basically go into edit mode, right? And we could just basically select this edge loop here or something like that. Grow this a little bit, like so. Just drop some of these. And then we can press Control I. Oops, let's go into face mode. Control I, H to hide. And then if we go back to weight paint mode, we can click this little paint mask on, and then only the unhidden geometry will be visible. Okay. And then we have this vertex selection as well, which we can check on, which will allow us to select specific vertices as well. And when we do this, I believe this allows us to mask only certain vertices, so only these selected vertices will be paintable, I believe. Let's just do a test and see. Yeah, so you see I can paint on these. I can't paint on these. Alright. So the tools are fairly powerful. It is still a little kind of like a bit of a clunky process to do weight painting, for being honest. That being said, we can also go into edit mode. Okay, we can go to vertex mode. Here in edit mode, and we can select a vertice. And then the item settings here, if we go to the item tab, we can see the specific values for each vert, right? So we've talked about this very briefly, but even in here we could say I only want this part to be influenced by a couple of bones. I don't want any spine 1 on this, so you can X that out. We want right leg 0. We don't want any right leg on this, let's say. Or maybe we do. Maybe we want half right leg, half left leg. So we can get 0.5, 0.5, and then the rest is going to be the hip. Let's say mostly the hip. So this doesn't add up to 1. This adds up to a different value. This adds up to 2. But we can also hit this button here, normalize, and then basically it'll kind of make all these values add up to 1. I'll just take the ratios and make sure it adds up to 1. Alright, and so all I've done is I've changed the weighting on this particular vertice. Okay, that's what I've done. If we have multiple verts selected, so if I have this, this, and this selected, you might think that any change I make here is being applied to all of these, and it's not. It's only being applied to the most recently selected vertice. So I change this here to say 2, right? And then hit normalize again. I might think that, again, that I've applied this this weighting, 0.67, right, to the hip, from the hip to this vert, 0.167 from each of the left and right legs to this vert, or sorry, from each of the left and right leg bones, I should say, to this vert, but it's only on this vert. So this, if I select this one, right, it's got totally different values. This one, it's got totally different values. So if I want to select multiple verts and I want whatever this I have visible here applied to the other verts I have selected, I have to touch copy. I have to press this copy button, and then these now will kind of take on the same relationship as what I had established here. Okay, so that's how we can also control our weight painting in edit mode. So we can map things out, block things out in edit mode, right, and then kind of do a more finer touch version in weight paint mode. Okay, or vice versa. We can map things out in weight paint mode and then kind of like really refine it and kind of get precise in edit mode after the fact. Okay, so that's basically it. That's kind of how all this works. We'll just look at one last thing. So if we go to object mode, so we have our armature here. And if you remember our armature, we have, each of these bones has a name. Okay, so this is L underscore leg dot 001, right? This is L underscore leg dot 002, etc., etc., etc. And each of these bones that are set to a deformation, right? So it's set to a deformation bone. It will automatically, when I bind this to a mesh, right? Or when I might, more accurate to say, when I bind a mesh to this armature, it will automatically look for which bones in that armature are set to deform, right? And if it's set to deform, then it will create a vertex group. Okay, so I'm in the mesh now. If I look at the vertex groups in my mesh, it will create a vertex group for each of those bound parts. So each of those deformation bones. So if I can look through the names here, all the names will be equivalent to the deformation bones that I had in my armature. Okay, and that's basically how it keeps track of all this. All right, and each of these vertex groups can contain 0 to 1 weighting data for each vert in my mesh. Okay, so each of these vertex groups contains that kind of data. So if I unhide this, and it won't be obvious, it's not like we can look at it and kind of look at the details of each vertex group. I believe, and I don't know if there might be a new spreadsheet, actually. This is in the new versions of Blender. Yeah, there's a spreadsheet. Okay, there we go. So yeah, the spreadsheet, this is new, but this basically will tell us, is this selected? Select. So basically I can click on this, right, and it'll select the vertices. I can select vertices from here. I can select the vertex group, say select the vertice, and in my spreadsheet it will tell me each of my vertices. I can't see it, but each of my vertices actually also has a number, right? So each of them has an index number, and each of them has a position here, right? And then each of them has a weighting for each of these vertex groups. So that foot, where did I have selected? The left foot, or the right foot, right leg dot 004. So if I look at this column, right, our leg dot 004, you can see the weighting on each of those verts. Okay, and you can see that not only is it getting weighting from this bone, the bone named r underscore leg dot 004, it's getting some from r underscore leg dot 003. Now, I've never really messed with the this editor in Blender, and I don't know how much you can do with it because it's like I said, it's a new edition. But the hope is that you could easily edit things. You can kind of clear things out or adjust things in a kind of like a more high level way. And that's kind of one of the strengths of Maya, is that you can kind of easily kind of keep track of like this kind of data. So I think it's early stages, but this is promising to be able to kind of track this kind of stuff. So anyways, that's basically how Blender keeps track of when this bone moves, which verts should move with it and to what percentage and to what degree. And if this bone is moving and this bone is moving, how much influence is this bone having on this particular vert versus this other bone. Okay, so it's weight painting in particular. Okay, so weight paint This is like a kind of like a heat map, visual representation of what's happening. But really what's happening is each of these vertices, right, has a particular weighting to a series of bones. One or more bones, basically. And we have, again, that further level of control over how we want our mesh to move when our bones move. Okay, so not only do we have control over joint placement to mimic kind of like the skeletal structure of a body, but we can also afterwards add, and we did it last week with the pectoralis muscles. We can add like some pectoralis or muscle bones, right, to mimic how muscles can deform the silhouette of a person, right? And we can make it seem like those muscle bones are anchored from one part of our skeleton to another part of our skeleton, right? So that their bone deformation, it seems accurate. And then on top of that, we have full control over each of the vertices on our mesh, right? So we can tell vertices which bones they should be following, right? So not only as a rigger do we have control over the layout of our armature, we should also be taking control over the position of the vertices on our mesh, where the edge loops are, how the thing can deform, right? Making sure that there are enough edge loops in places that you need more deformation, like knees and elbows and things like that. We can be very strategic about how we arrange those vertices, right? So we looked at 2 or 3 weeks ago how we can have more spans here on the front than we have on the back, right? So that we get a better deformation when the leg flexes. And there's all kinds of different things that we have control over. Okay, it of course gets complicated, but we want to have that kind of like foundation of thought process of thinking for when we're kind of controlling this stuff, so that we can kind of get the results that we want. All right, and then the last thing that we talked about today is just having like custom control shapes. And I know we've covered this before, but it makes all the world of difference to organize our mesh properly. So having custom control shapes, hiding the things that we don't want to kind of deal with, and all that. Okay. So that's effectively it, guys. I think we can probably wrap a little early today. I don't know if there's any questions. All right, so how do you know what to paint? So what do you mean by that? I don't know if that question got answered or not, but so, and just to kind of recap what I did, one or two things. You either go into edit mode and make sure lock object modes is turned off, right? And then if you do that, you can kind of go into pose mode. You can select your armature in pose mode, shift select your mesh, and then go into weight paint. And then you can easily select, not only can you easily select different bones, right, to see the weight influence on your mesh. Oops, what am I doing? This, select this, shift select this. Okay, so we can let's turn this on. That's what's, so we can select our bones, but we want our deformation bones. So my deformation bones right now are all kind of pretty much hidden, but generally speaking, you'd want to kind of select your deformation bone, right? You can rotate it to kind of preview what that deformation will look like. Right, and then you can go in with your weight painting tools and paint. And basically what's happening is this is a very organic way of me assigning vert values to this vertex group. So the vertex group again will be named after this bone, right? In this case, spine.001. So any weight painting I do here, so if I click add here and I change this weighting here, there's an associated vertice that the values will be changing. So I can actually maybe visualize it even in here. So I'm looking in the column of spine 001. And if I paint here, I can see if there's any changes happening. And there's a way to turn on the vertex indices so that we can actually see them in vertex mode or in edit mode in Blender. I'm just going to see. And I'm not 100% sure how to do that in this version of Blender, but visibility, viewport display, axes, edges. Let's see, geometry data. So for example, there's ways to make the normals visible. It's just some of the stuff has kind of moved around, and I haven't gone in and checked to see how to turn that stuff on and off. Let's see. Yeah, there's a way to make it visible, but yeah. Basically, suffice it to say, like, this is an array of indices, right? Each one having I guess another array, right? That gives all the important information. I don't know exactly how Blender stores it internally, but there's going to be the position data, right? So the XYZ coordinate. There's going to potentially be UV data, right? So I don't know if this is UV'd. But if I were to UV unwrap this, U unwrap, you know, and that's not something I'm seeing here, but if potentially we'd also see UV data and everything like that, right? So ultimately, that's how this is stored, and you know, for weight painting and for armor rigging, the thing you need to remember is that each of the bones, each of the deformation bones that we make is going to create a vertex group in our mesh, right? With a weighting for certain verts in our mesh to that particular vertex group, okay? And that's how Blender understands how when this bone moves, move these vertices with it, okay? And it's always changeable. It's always something we can go in and manipulate, whether we're in weight paint mode or whether we're in edit mode. Okay. All right. So height painting, weight painting, yes, you can fix all of that. Yes, absolutely, Ricardo, you can fix that with weight painting for sure. Or strategically, if you're never going to see that part of arm, delete it. Just delete it. And just have the mesh on top of the clothes. Anything that you'll never see, you can delete. Okay, so you'll see it. Okay, so anyways, guys, that's basically it. We'll wrap up today. Hopefully that's helpful. I look forward to seeing you guys, your rigs for next week. Make sure again you have the Sketchfab and the blend file and everything's working, and you can demonstrate that the rig is posable. Oh, sorry, there's one last thing that I wanted to discuss, and this kind of ties into the whole left-right naming convention. I know I've discussed it before, but let's just do it again. Select everything, Alt G, Alt R. So let's turn this into, say, a graph editor. Why not? In pose mode, I can move. Let's move the body down. Let's move a leg forward. click back. So we can have something like this, right? And we'll select all the bones here. I'll press I, copy the location and rotation. Okay, so I just set a keyframe. What I can do now is I can press Control C, right? Just Control C to copy all and put my cursor in this viewport. Control C, and I can go, say, to frame. Let's go to frame, say, 10. Okay, and then now I can press Control Shift V, and it's gonna flop the pose. Okay, and then I can press I again, key location and rotation. So now you see we can start getting the beginnings of a walk cycle. It's not a good walk cycle, but it's the beginnings of a walk cycle, right? And then I can go to, say, frame 20. I can press Control C again, or sorry, Control V, my bad. Control V to copy the original pose. And I can press I here, key the location rotation. So this is the functionality we want to achieve by naming the parts of our mesh L underscore R underscore, right? So we can kind of get that quick kind of movement. So we have our stride positions, right? And all we would need at that point is our crossover positions. So if I go to frame 5, let's lift the body up, G, Z. Let's lift this guy up, G, Z, R, X. Okay, my apologies. So we have this. Select everything. Press I. Key the location rotation. So now we, whoops. So this is actually in the wrong spot. So just select these keys, and I'll just actually move them. G, X, 10. Oops, what did I do? G, X, 10. Okay, so I just actually move them here. We'll go to this frame, copy this, Control C, copy that pose, go back to frame 5 and press Control Shift V one more time, and then insert a keyframe there. Okay, so now we have our basic kind of walk cycle. And I'll just go to frame 19 here, and I'll just set that to our timeline range. So I'll set this to a timeline, set this to say 19. Okay, so if I were to play this, we have like a basic walk cycle. It's a very kind of, start, but we put in our stride positions, we put in our crossover positions, and we can very, very quickly get to a workable walk cycle, right? There's things that we still need to do, like kind of get the catch position, the lift-off position, and all that kind of stuff, but just kind of make sure we have proper overlapping action and all that kind of stuff. But in general, you can get a decent result fairly quick. Alright guys, so that's where we're going to end off today. Hopefully helpful. I'm looking forward to seeing those more advanced legs setups as a component of your rig. If you have any questions, absolutely let me know. I'm happy to meet anytime I'm available. So if you have a question, if you want to meet on Thursday or sometimes Friday or whatever, just let me know. Anytime outside of office hours is still good. All right, everybody. I will see you guys this evening. Good luck on your GDW presentations, and yeah, I'll see you guys then. Hopefully my internet stuff will be sorted by then as well. All right, everybody. Take care.